Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Ian Sachs. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, a look back at stories from our Los Angeles bureau, from eco-friendly tourists to a law that allows parents to sue social media for their children's addictions to the platform.
Michaela Medell is just 10 years old. Her mom limits her to less than an hour per day on platforms such as YouTube. According to Common Sense Media, 38% of tweens ages 8 to 12 use social media. Adriana Medell is a single mother who works full-time and says it is her role to monitor her daughter's social media usage.
I don't agree with the bill. I think it's really up to the parents to monitor their children's social media accounts.
Yet some advocates like Common Sense Media say social media companies know how to target kids in a way parents cannot stop.
The reality here is that social media can enter a room where parents can't see into. It's not something that we can stop at the door and say, hey, you're not allowed to enter my house.
A bill moving through the California legislature, AB 2408, creates an accountability standard for social media companies. Parents who prove their child is addicted can sue for up to $25,000 per violation. While advocates such as Common Sense Media are ready to hold social media platforms accountable.
Companies like TechNet and Chamber of Progress argue that kids under 18 would no longer have access to important online support networks.
What they're saying is that teenagers won't be able to spend time with their friends and peers, one of the few solaces during the pandemic. But Medell says her daughter experienced bullying for the first time, and she says lawmakers need to focus on content, not screen time.
Just become really something that's, in my opinion, something that's a really dark place for kids, and I do feel like something needs to happen.
Dion believes other states may follow with similar legislation.
If California can protect its kids, I think other states will have to ask themselves, why don't our kids deserve this same level of protection?
In Los Angeles, Emily Miranda, Cronkite News.
The bill gives companies an option to avoid the courts. They must maintain quarterly audits to evaluate their practices. If practices potentially cause addiction, they must be fixed within 30 days.
The Summit of Americas begins today in Los Angeles, but ahead of it, the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications held a first-of-its-kind media summit at the ASU California Center in downtown LA. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken headlined the event. Reporter Emily Miranda was there and tells us how the United States planned to fight misinformation in the Americas.
This lies at the heart of our democracy.
Mauricio Sanchez is a Colombian journalist working for Studio 3 Multimedia in New York. One of dozens of journalists from across the Americas gathered for the Media Summit of the Americas. They are here to discuss strengthening the critical role media plays in democracies. Secretary of State Antony Blinken talked about ways to build democracies through the press, the first to tackle dis and misinformation.
We've seen how these falsehoods can polarize communities, poison the public square, undermine people's trust in health systems, government institutions, in democracy itself.
The dean of the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, Vitinto Batts, gave opening remarks. He says Cronkite plays an important role.
It's our responsibility to make as many people as possible aware of, the power of media, the importance of media, the responsibility that media has. And then to play that, to be an educator and to empower people to utilize media and to, spreading, messaging and accuracy, promoting accuracy.
The U.S. Special Advisor for the Summit of the Americas, Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, says free press is in danger in many places across the Americas.
But a threat against the free press is a threat to democracy itself, because it erodes the ingredients that democracies need to function.
Security is tight here in Los Angeles. Barriers surround the convention center as the Summit of Americas begins today. So Blinken took the opportunity during the media summit to announce a new hub of the Digital Communication Network for the Americas, a tool to fight misinformation and encourage a free press.
The same is true for free, independent press across the hemisphere. It has to exist, now more than ever. for the well-being of our people, for the well-being of our communities, for the well-being of our democracies.
To help do that, the Biden administration is giving financial aid to at-risk media, including $30 million to the International Fund for Public Interest Media. In Los Angeles, Emily Miranda, Cronkite News.
Bat says this event is Cronkite's most significant work so far. He looks forward to seeing what Cronkite will do next and who else they can engage in the process.
What started as a way to make friends has turned into an organization that provides an uplifting and inclusive community for women who have a disability. Cronkite News reporter Madison Thomas has more on how the Rolettes are breaking barriers.
You don't deserve to feel alone because there's someone else out there that's going through the same thing as you.
Rolette's founder and CEO, Chelsea Hill, was injured in a drunk driving accident.
When I was paralyzed at 17, I didn't really know anyone else with a disability that was my age and that was like me. And so I reached out to a few girls on social media and invited them to my hometown to dance and hang out.
That was the start of what has become the Rolettes. Since then, the dance team has performed at professional sporting events, grown a large social media following, and annually hosts the Rolettes Experience.
I think what keeps me going is seeing all of the faces at Rolette's Experience, seeing the girls that have never traveled for the first time, or never traveled in general, or seeing the girls that have never met another person like them, and the smiles that I see.
The Rolettes Experience is a 4-day event for girls of all ages who use a mobility device. It includes seminars, dance classes, panels, and guest speakers.
I call it like the core of what we are. It's the thing that brought us all together. It's really just about community, connection, and sisterhood.
Maya Hendricks attended the Rolettes Experience for the first time in 2019, and it is something that has had a huge impact on who she is today.
I rolled into a room of 175 women in wheelchairs at eye level with me. It was one of the most amazing feelings that I've had in my life, let alone since being injured. It was really somewhere I could connect with everyone.
The group relies heavily on sponsorships and donations to put on the Rolettes Experience and currently has a GoFundMe account.
I never want money to be the reason why someone can't attend something like this because you know, it really is life-changing for people in so many different ways.
Chelsea has big goals for the Rolettes. It not only attracts women from here in LA, but all over the world. She sees it as the #1 place for women with disabilities to come together. In Los Angeles, Madison Thomas, Cronkite News.
Registration is open for the 2022 Rolettes Experience, which is taking place July 21st through July 24th in Los Angeles.
This next story is right out of a movie. A priceless piece of artwork stolen 37 years ago from the University of Arizona Museum of Art is now on display at the Getty Center in Los Angeles. Reporter Emily Miranda found out more about the restoration of the stolen painting.
Not only is this a story out of a movie, it will be the subject of a documentary called The Thief Collector, which is expected to be out later this year.
The Woman Occur painting by Willem de Kooning has been estimated as worth $160 million. It has been at the Getty Center in Los Angeles for the last 3 years undergoing restoration. Senior conservator Laura Rivers spent more time than anyone else working on it.
What was intended to be a relatively short-term project, because of the lack of studio time we had to undertake during the pandemic, the project stretched to almost 3 years.
De Kooning painted the piece in 1955 to explore the female figure. In 1958, the painting's owner, Edward Gallagher, donated it to the University of Arizona Museum of Art. In 1985, it was stolen. This sketch shows the alleged thieves who ripped it from its canvas. Curators think they rolled it up, hid it under a coat, and walked out, causing this extensive damage. 32 years later, a New Mexico antique dealer bought it for $2,000 at an estate sale in New Mexico. It had been hanging in the home of 2 school teachers who died.
We know it was stolen in 1985, and then in 2017, it was hanging behind the bedroom door. Anything that happened in between, you know, we can only make assumptions about it because we truly don't know for sure.
Some of the antique store customers recognized it as a de Kooning, and so the antique dealer contacted the museum in Arizona. The museum shipped it back to verify originality.
I was pretty well convinced that it was the painting, but after seeing it perfectly line up with its edges, that was really all we needed to know.
Surface. This was the most fragmented paint surface that I had ever worked on. And it was at the same time the largest and the smallest jigsaw puzzle that I've ever participated in, that I've ever worked on.
You can see how the team first reattached the lifted and flaked areas. Conservators used specialized solvents to remove the discoloring from years of applied varnish. A new lining was attached and reunited with the original canvas. This team finished by painting in the damaged areas.
The painting goes on display at the University of Arizona Museum of the Art October 8th through May 20th. After, it will move upstairs into the permanent collection gallery. In Los Angeles, Emily Miranda, Cronkite News.
Top Gun Maverick is skyrocketing at the box office, and according to IMDb, it has grossed over $900 million worldwide since being released at the end of May. Cronkite News reporter Madison Thomas met the aerial coordinator who made this film come to life.
The blockbuster film is already one of the most popular movies of the summer. The movie's use of aircraft and aerial scenes sets it apart from other movies. But if you're thinking this was all done through CGI, I talked to someone who will tell you it wasn't.
Scenes from Top Gun Maverick like this one look real because it is actually real. One of the people responsible for making this happen is pilot Kevin LaRosa.
Know that every time we see a jet or anything on camera in Top Gun Maverick, there's a real aircraft there. Every time we see a cast member in a cockpit, they are in an F-18 doing those maneuvers.
LaRosa is a third-generation pilot and second-generation aerial coordinator and stunt pilot. He was learning how to fly at an age when you may have been learning how to drive. He grew up following in the footsteps of his idol, his dad.
Even if he wasn't my dad, I would look up to this person and go, man, I want to do what he does. And that gave me this drive in life to do that.
Throughout his career, he has worked on films including Transformers: The Last Knight, The Avengers, and Iron Man. But this one raised the bar. The crew strived for perfection.
A huge testament to Tom Cruise and the Paramount team for going through the expense and the effort to train the cast. Our cast literally basically had to learn how to fly. We started them into this training program that Tom was driving.
The film was originally set to be released a couple years ago, but the COVID-19 pandemic got in the way of that. LaRosa says this is a movie that was made to be watched on the big screen with the surround sound.
I've sat in movie theaters and I've watched grown men cry. I've watched people spill their popcorn and cheer. That is the best feeling in the world. That's all the crew's blood, sweat, and hard work on the big screen being delivered and people receiving it in the way they are.
LaRosa says the film has a natural progression and continuously gets more intense. The final sequence of the movie is his favorite.
It looked as epic and dynamic and crazy to me sitting in the pilot seat of the camera jet and camera helicopter as it does on the big screen.
We talked to LaRosa's dad, and he says he could not be more proud than his son. His son has become better than he could ever be. In Los Angeles, Madison Thomas, Cronkite News.
In the early 1980s, there were fewer than 25 California condors in the world. The remaining birds were brought into captivity as part of the California Condor Recovery Program in hopes of preserving the critically endangered species. Cronkite News reporter Joey Vaca tells us how the big birds are doing under this protection program.
When Michael Clark started as a condor keeper at the LA Zoo in 1989, the bird's population was in the 30s. Now, with a population of over 500 individuals in captivity and the wild, some call the California condor a conservation success story.
I guess you could say we've saved it from long-term extinction because we have a captive protected population that can produce more birds.
The work is far from over. Over the years, the focus has shifted from captive breeding to wild releases, and not just in California.
We're talking about more release sites in other states where condor, evidence has been found, fossil evidence and stuff like that.
Part of the condor's natural habitat extends into northern Arizona and southern Utah. And as the Arizona Game and Fish Department's Condor Program Coordinator Austin Teague points out, State 48 is just as good a habitat now as ever before.
That area up there where they're released is very remote, has good cliff faces for nesting. and also has large populations of deer and for food.
But even with numbers rising, Clark points out that the condors aren't out of the woods yet.
If you want to talk about the real story of what's going on and why it's not like as rosy as it could be, you have to talk about what's holding us back.
Poisoning from lead ammunition and animal carcasses poses a major threat to the condors. So much so that if today's captive breeding efforts were to stop, the species would go extinct in 20 years. With the push against lead ammunition stronger than ever before, Clark and his fellow keeper of nearly 30 years hope that someday soon, the population can thrive without the looming threat of poison.
I want to just be driving home from work and see condors independently of my work.
Yeah.
You know, drive home and I'm going, hey, check it out. There's
Hey,
some
look,
birds.
there's a bird. No tag.
Remember when we used to work with those?
In Los Angeles, Joey Vaca, Cronkite News.
David and Clark said right now 50% of known condor mortality is caused by lead poisoning. Here in Arizona, the Arizona Game and Fish Department is active in promoting non-lead ammunition for hunters.
Gender inequality is an issue in skateboarding. Last year, a skate park guide published an article saying less than a quarter of all skateboarders are women. Cronkite sports reporter Liam Barrett was able to catch up with a skateboarder who was helping change that narrative.
16-year-old Meredith Lowenstein is one of the few women skaters at her local park, but that hasn't stopped her from doing what she loves.
99% of the time I'm pretty outnumbered. I don't really mind it though, because I'm usually friends with people at the skate park. I've been able to skate with some girl skaters. It's just definitely more rare.
Despite now being an Olympic sport, Skate Park Guide says just 16% of serious skateboarders are women. It takes courage to be a female skateboarder, and that courage impacts others.
I think that seeing that someone else can do it makes them think that they'll be able to one day. You know, older girls do it and be really successful, whether it's on social media or in real life. I think that's a push for a lot of younger girls to get into it.
It takes a specific type of person to enact change. Trailblazing isn't for the weak-minded, something her dad says she's never been.
She is definitely free-spirited and strong-willed, which I think lends itself well to the sport that she's involved in. But she's a little bit rebellious too, and I think that's to be expected with skateboarding.
The stereotype in the sport is to be rebellious, so it only makes sense for a woman skateboarder to change the status quo, one trick at a time. In Manhattan Beach, Liam Barrett, Cronkite News.
The Paris Summer Olympics will have skateboarding for both women and men. This is the second Olympics in a row that will have the sport. Welcome back. I'm Madison Thomas with your Cronkite Sports Report from Los Angeles. I'm standing in Santa Monica at a place that was once known as the Inkwell. It was the only part of the beach where African Americans once felt safe to gather. Cronkite News reporter Liam Barrett spent a day at the beach where surfers celebrated a man who broke the color barrier in their sport.
So thank you for joining us to celebrate Nick.
Nick Gabaldon is celebrated as the first Black and Latino surfer in Los Angeles. The Santa Monica native grew up in a time when people of color could only go to a beach locals called the Inkwell. Marion Clark teaches inner city kids to surf. She says Gabaldon's story still has an effect on the community.
I think it's so important that we acknowledge the legacy of segregation in Los Angeles among the surf community, like among people of color and the waterline, and we can do something about that.
This year marks the 10th Nick Gabaldon Day. Jeff Williams says the Black Surfer Collective started the tradition because they needed a unifying figure.
There were more severe race riots between the Blacks and Latinos, and I was like, well, this is the perfect way to get the communities together around a common person that we can all identify with.
Gabaldon's story inspires many to come to the beach and feel like they belong.
Surfing is not a sport where we tend to see a lot of people of color, right? And for a long time, it felt like we didn't maybe have permission to partake in that. And so knowing that, you know, there was somebody around in the 50s, you know, that was surfing, it kind of gives us permission to be like, oh, this is something for us to do.
According to the latest census, more than 70% of people in Los Angeles are people of color. Yet according to surf organizations like Color the Water, the surf community is still white dominated. With these celebrations, they continue Gabaldon's legacy of diversifying the water. In Santa Monica, Liam Barrett, Cronkite News.
Surf Bus director Marion Clark says Nick Gabaldon Day embodies what diversity in the sports community should look like. What started as one person looking to meet others in the LGBTQ+ community has turned into a national organization that aims to create a supportive and inclusive sports environment. I was at one of their most recent events in Los Angeles. Kickball on a Sunday afternoon. The Varsity Gay League offers game after game like this one.
What we as an organization try to keep in forefront is everyone's welcome. And when we say that, we mean it.
Founder Will Hackner saw a need in his own life to socialize with others in his community.
I myself was not meeting people. I wasn't having the best of times. I felt it was all about drinking and partying, and I was just like, I want to have fun.
Phoenix League manager Wes Scruggs grew up liking sports, but says the environment wasn't always positive for him.
Super, hyper masculinity and stuff, like toxicity, as someone who's trying to figure out their sexuality and growing up, it's like, oh gosh, okay, I guess that's not good.
Hackner was not into sports growing up.
I was a bullied kid, horribly bullied, tragically bullied, terrified of sports. I was small, so I was not a sports guy. However, as I grew up and got older, I realized that there was a lot of benefit to sports.
15 years ago, Hackner planned what became their first event.
They'd capture the flag at a park. 50 people showed up, and we said, wow, there must be something here. There's a kernel of something, and that put us sort of off to the races.
The environment here is lighthearted and positive. It is obvious that everyone is just here to have a good time. The Varsity Gay League has now grown nationally, with, they say, more than 40,000 athletes, including 400 in Phoenix. In Los Angeles, Madison Thomas, Cronkite News. The Varsity Gay League says everyone is welcome in their leagues, even if you are not part of the LGBTQ+ community. That's all for your Cronkite Sports Report from Los Angeles. Back to you.
I'm Victoria Samuels, and I'm here with your Cronkite News LA Sports Report. The Olympics is returning here to LA in 6 years, and it's a good bet that a beach volleyball player from Phoenix hopes to be there. Sarah Sponsel had a big win this weekend in Hermosa Beach, and Cronkite News reporter Liam Barrett spoke with her after the tournament.
The Hermosa Beach AVP Pro Series was back for the first time since 2019. One of the stars of the tournament, Sarah Sponsel, was raised in Phoenix, where she won 3 state titles and 2 Arizona Gatorade Player of the Year awards at Veritas Prep. Now she's one of the best players on the beach. Her family made the trip from Phoenix to cheer her on, giving her some extra motivation on the court.
Oh yeah, you're always trying to win for your family. They've been with me all week, so it's been great. I love to have my family here and just to go talk to them after the matches. It's amazing.
Sponsel was 0-4 in AVP championship games coming into the tournament. Her new teammate Therese Cannon had never been to a finals before. Cannon says Sponsel's leadership helped keep her calm in big moments.
Honestly, Sarah was so clutch because there was a lot of thoughts going on in my head, but I think it was 14-14, and she was like, hey, there's no one here, it's 0-0, we just have to stick with what we know, and that's kind of what we did.
This athletic save and powerful spike helped the duo take home the $125,000 purse. With 2 more AVP Pro Series events left, the pair looks to make Hermosa Beach the first championship of many. In Los Angeles, Liam Barrett, Cronkite News.
The duo will be playing in another tournament at the end of the month in Fort Lauderdale. It is very common in the NWSL to see children on the sideline. It brings a whole new meaning to the term soccer mom. Instagram star Sydney Leroux is one of those soccer moms that is very public with her children. Sydney now plays for Angel City FC, and I spoke with her this week. After every game, Sydney Leroux's 2 children, 5-year-old Cassius and 3-year-old Rue, run onto the pitch to give her hugs. Sydney graduated from Horizon High School in Scottsdale and was with the Orlando Pride for 5 years, and in June, she and her kids packed up and moved to Los Angeles for Angel City FC. She spoke to the media on an audio conference call.
My kids are extremely adaptable. I think that as an athlete, that's what you have to be. You have to be adaptable. You have to you know, one day you're in Orlando and the next day you're in Los Angeles.
She regularly posts shots like this with her children, 5-year-old Cassius cheering on his mom during the game, or them playing soccer in the backyard. Sorry. LaRue's ACFC teammate Claire Emsley says that she too wants to become a mom and knows by watching LaRue what's possible.
To see her in the changing rooms like breastfeeding before a game and stuff, I was just so inspired.
Sydney was one of the 7 moms in the NWSL last season, and Coach Freya Coombs says the visibility of getting more moms is massive for the game.
You can be a mum and play at the highest level, and you get the support from your club. It is huge, and I think that's a step forward for everyone involved in the game, and I think that's the way in which we're going to get more women involved in the sport.
Coombs says that support for not only players, but staff and their family will help the game of soccer continue to grow. And that's your sports report from Los Angeles. Back to you.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thank you for joining us. And for top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.